This episode is brought to you by Cane's Donuts, celebrating 65 years as the best donuts in Boston. Follow Cane's on Instagram at Cane's_donuts to see why donuts are love.
The Wonton Don, about to fry you up a batch. I think me and you are the perfect match.
In this episode, I'm talking to Donnie Mahoney, a.k.a. the Wonton Don. Donnie dives into travel, psychedelics, his life in the Middle Kingdom, and working with Barstool. So crack open 3 beers and a Fanta. Take a ride with the Wonton Don. This is the Old Dirty Boston Podcast. How did you end up in China? Like, why'd you go there?
It was actually a friend in college went abroad to Shanghai his junior year, and then he loved it so much that he just stayed in China. Like, he didn't even come back for his senior year.
I did the same thing.
So I was graduating at the time and had no idea what I wanted to do after college. I've always loved to travel, and he was like, man, you should come out to China. Like, there's loads of opportunities out here. So I decided to give it a go for just 10 months, but then I don't know. I enjoyed it out there, and 10 months ended up turning into like 7 years.
Wow. Did you jump into a teaching gig when you first got there?
Yeah. My first year, I was teaching full time. I know, like, originally when I was making vids, I told people that I just blacked out at Logan Airport and woke up in China. And there was a couple people like, dude, you're lying. You need a visa to go to China. So that was obviously a joke. But yeah, I taught full time my first year, and then I just did a bunch of other random odd jobs, and I always did a little bit of private tutoring on the side. The nice thing about being in China is, like, the private tutoring, like, where you're just pretty much speaking English with someone for 2 hours, it pays pretty well. One of my first tutoring gigs was this 5-year-old kid, and his parents were loaded. They, like, lived inside this gigantic complex that had a golf course. Like, I would show up at their mansion once a week to teach their kid, and their kid was just the most, like, painfully spoiled person I've ever met. And they were paying well, so I was like, I'll do it. But he refused to actually do anything that I told him to.
Wow.
And he was pretty messed up. He would just be like, draw a gun. And he just wanted me to, like, draw a picture of a gun. And then he would make me just draw guns over and over again. It was super fucked up. And if I refused, I was like, no, we're actually going to learn some English. He would just scream at the top of his lungs. And his parents, like, couldn't control him whatsoever.
Yikes.
It was brutal. I found that, like, if I could tutor at least 10 hours a week, like, that would be enough to pay the bills.
Yeah.
So that was great, and that, like, allowed me to have some time on the side to, you know, make videos and things like that, because I wasn't making any money from the videos the first maybe, like, four or 5 years I was doing it.
So, Chinese culture. I told you, I lived in China for a couple of years. I've traveled there. I've probably been to China 8 or 9 times. And
oh, wow,
it's
that's awesome.
So cool for me to see the places that you go that I've been. One, it's kind of nostalgic, but two, the way that you kind of present, like, the videos, the way that you do your content, it's literally just like hanging out with one of your buds in the best way, you know, like chasing down the old ladies to try and buy some weed from them, or just getting wasted drunk at a dinner.
Yep.
It, like, people don't really hear. I don't have that relation to people. I can't bring it up and talk about it with them, and they get it, but, like, it's so cool to just sort of, like, I guess, live it again through you, and realize, like, hey man, this guy is having the time of his life, and, like, it's amazing. The drinking alone in China, I think no one could expect what it would be.
When you see a guy just posting videos of him crushing booze online, you don't really think that guy is going to be a poet. It seems like all of his savage drinking videos come with a very heartfelt message.
A king can not only drink and break bricks. A true king always loves his family and his friends. Love is the most powerful strength. Love your family, cook them delicious food. Good night, my friends. This dude is a peasant Shakespeare. I'm only here for 24 hours, but the amount of beers, baijiu, and cigarettes that we are going to demolish is astronomical.
It's a lot of fun. Did you drink a lot of baijiu when you were there?
Not a lot of baijiu. So
okay, yeah.
That
stuff's rough.
So I was kind of like taken into a Chinese family. Like, I really, you know, like, integrated and did that whole thing. And my father-in-law, who's a huge boozer, drinks, you know, morning, noon, and night. He would always be like, no, like, don't give him the baijiu. Like, don't drink the baijiu. Just keep him on beers. Or I would drink huangjiu, which is pretty popular in Shanghai.
Oh yeah,
the brown stuff. Yeah, I got so wasted one time on that. I went to a lunch. It was 11 a.m. and it was like lamb guts basically, and I couldn't put it. You know, it was like hearts and spleens and all that stuff in the soup, and the only way to eat it was going to be to, like, get wasted. So I just started hammering the huangjiu and completely blacked blacked out, and apparently I went home to the apartment, projectile vomited all over my in-laws' bathroom, and then they found me in a closet, like in the fetal position.
Where in China was this?
Oh, in Shanghai, but she was
nice.
from Chongming, so we would like take that ferry before they had the bridge.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to say, have you been seeing in the news all this about the coronavirus?
I have. So I saw something that somebody landed in Seattle from China with it.
Yeah, and so it's a little scary because I'm planning on flying back to China like next week. So hopefully it doesn't like become a full-fledged epidemic.
So the first year when I was supposed to go to China, I was going in a school program, and they canceled it because of SARS. I remember the kind of the panic around that, and it was to the point where like schools, people were not traveling. Like I think there was a issued warning from the US, like do not go to China right now. So
I had a few friends that were in China around the time of SARS, and I guess they were on a flight and super hungover on the flight. They had just come from a wedding. The flight attendants like thought that they might have SARS because they just looked horrendous. And so then they called on these people and they had to like monitor them and just like confirm that they didn't actually have SARS when they were just hungover.
With the community you have of friends, is it like, do you hang out mostly with expats? Do you hang out with a mix of Chinese and
yeah, I would say a majority of expats, but also a cool thing of living in Shanghai is you get to meet foreigners from all over the world. Like if you go out in Boston, you're mainly just going to meet people from Massachusetts, it seems like. But then like when you go out in Shanghai, you meet people from all over Europe. You might meet some Australians, some people from South America. So that's always been cool.
Was there a period where you're like a little off the rails?
Yeah, I mean, my first year I was hanging out with people from Liverpool. Those guys were nuts. They just like wouldn't sleep on the weekends. Like a lot of places will be open till 5 or 6, but then once those places closed, they would have these after hour places that would be open until like 11 a.m. or noon the following day.
Can I ask what your best psychedelic experience has been?
Yeah, sure. There's like best, and then there's most intense.
Oh, how was Dragon Burn? That looked so fucking weird.
That was like actually one of the more intense actually experiences. So those shrooms, I guess shrooms just like grow wild in China. My friend's girlfriend, like in her hometown in China, they had grown a bunch of them, and she brought them to Shanghai.
Damn.
Yeah, when I took those, that was probably one of my most intense shroom experiences, which is why like for a full day we didn't even film there.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, they took the shrooms and then like didn't film any of it, and I was like, something must have gone haywire.
Like, I realized this. Well, I think it was because me and my camera guy both took shrooms, so then we were just in like no state to film content.
Wow.
But even if he had been sober and like I had been on shrooms, I don't know if the content would have been that good. It would have just been me being like, oh wow, oh I'm so confused. But I mean, it still would have been pretty funny.
Is it like mind expanding stuff for you when you're doing that? Is it kind of just like a good time, like partying, or are you having some,
It was definitely mind expanding. Like, yeah, I'll rarely take psychedelics just to party. I have like microdosed a couple times, where you like, if you take like a small amount, then it's kind of, you almost just feel like you smoked a joint or something like that. It's not like, you feel it for sure, but it's not like super intense. It's like no one would even know that you're on it. But no, I won't take it to party. Like usually I know it's going to be a more like intense spiritual experience.
Yeah, well, I wanted you to take shrooms and go tour the Encore Casino here.
I mean, yeah, I would probably do that. That would be hilarious.
So yeah, that's maybe still on the table. You got a week left. So in China, are you kind of known among like Chinese people or expat community? Like, do people, because your content is mostly on YouTube here, which isn't really super available there. Like,
yeah, I've almost found like before working for Barstool, I was probably more well known amongst the expats and some Chinese people in China.
Right.
And then since working for Barstool, I'm now actually like better known in the US than I am back in China, just because like a lot of the expats might not follow Barstool or know what that is.
Yeah. No, I have to say, I have binge watched all your videos. It's just so much fun for me. Like, you found this perfect balance of just making it like funny, cool, wild, but also you get to see cool places and like there's some information there.
Yeah, I'm sure like my first year of content, like the goal of the videos was just to be as absurd as possible. Past 2 years, I'm like, hey, I can like, make the videos funny, but then also, maybe throw in a voiceover that actually teaches the people something.
Do you think next steps wise, like, could you ever get a spot on like a Kimmel or something like that, where it's like you're doing a recurring kind of thing that's part of the show? I mean, I know that's what you do at Barstool, but
I know on a lot of those shows, they're like, we're going to go to our correspondent, and rarely do they have a correspondent who is in China. And it would be cool just because China is in the news so much these days.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think hopefully you can do whatever you want, because you really put out great stuff. So the Barstool thing, did you have any relationship there before? Like they found you found them once you had already gotten going? And
they shared some of my first YouTube vids on the website, and then over the years we talked here or there, but like every time I was like, so could I potentially work part-time for you guys or something like that, then the email trail would go cold. So like I'd be talking to Dave, he'd be responding to the first 3 emails or something, but then eventually I just wouldn't hear anything back. So it wasn't until I saw they were doing Barstow Idol that I was like, this would be a good chance to get in front of them and pitch my ideas.
Cool.
The good thing about working for Barstool is that even when I have a trip that's not sold, Dave will usually approve it. I think just because he likes the content and like knows I'll do a good job of it.
Yeah.
But I would kind of just, if I had an idea, like I could be just out filming that the following week. Now they're trying to organize the content a little bit more. So I'll talk to a few people back in the office and be like, so over the next year, like these are like the 4 trips I want to do.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I started the podcast. It's getting like close to a year. I was living in New York. I was living in China. I came back to Boston. I kind of recognized and realized like this tradition of people telling stories here, and it's like just sitting around with your friends. I guess growing up, I always never really gave that much thought, like that it was special. And then I realized like, oh, like this is actually really kind of a Boston thing, and remembering the stories like my uncles would tell, just wild stuff. And so I really dedicated like, hey, I want to get some of these on tape, because the people that I grew up around, those kind of blue collar people, are really getting like washed out of the city. Good, bad, or ugly, like this is something worth recording and like remembering, even just the way people speak. And that's another thing I love, is like you have kind of that Massachusetts like Boston thing in you.
Yeah, that was like one of the ideas behind the videos at first. It was like, what if you took this guy from Massachusetts and threw him in the middle of China, but he still like just acted like he wasn't fazed and just acted like he was back in Massachusetts.
Well, I love like all the like quips and like little, references, just things that you'll say to people that they obviously have no idea what you're saying, but it's just so hilarious for the people that are watching. So who are some of the people that you watched like when you were, a kid or like a teenager, maybe inspired like what you do or your comedy?
One show that my brother introduced me to was Trailer Park Boys.
Yeah. What about Adam Sandler? Did you do much like his old CDs and stuff?
I think it was like What the Hell Happened to Me. His comedy albums were like the funniest thing I had ever heard in my life.
I agree. I used to go home, me and my friends, we'd go after school and we would just listen to the CD.
Yeah.
Any of the Sandler albums, like The Peeper, The Goat. The Goat is one of the greatest masterpieces of comedy ever. It's just, so anybody who hasn't heard it, like for younger kids, dude, do yourself a favor and listen to the old Sandler albums. They're classics.
And listen to the psychotic legend of Uncle Donnie.
It was about to come out of my mouth, as you said. I'm so happy about that. That's all.
So I had a couple glasses of Chardonnay. What of it?
It's like taking away a horse's cock. It's all he's got.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, because I remember being inspired by someone. Oh, I guess it's sort of like Sacha Baron Cohen.
Yeah.
Where it's like he'll be making a movie like with a storyline, but he's like him and maybe one other person are the only actors in it, and then everyone else he just uses real people. That was kind of something I was trying to do at first when I arrived in China, because I was like, all right, I don't know enough people who can act or would even want to do it. If you just go out and you're sort of the actor, but then everyone else in the video is real, you almost create your own like sitcom of sorts.
Yeah, well, and I think like Curb Your Enthusiasm, they talk about how, it has a script and it has like a plot and everything, but really it's kind of an improv. Like he doesn't write all the lines. It's that balance of having structure and kind of spontaneity.
And that approach, you never know what's going to happen, but when it pays off, it's awesome.
I'm kind of here to report on like housemaid heaven, not do political interviews, but I could. Joe Cody! Jokowi is good for Indonesia, guys. It's time for you to see the truth. Hey, guys, always let Sunday ruin your Monday.
If anybody out there is thinking about like what to do in their life and you're like 20-something years years old. Try to go to Asia if you can. Like, find a way to get by. You don't need a lot of money. It's one of the most like fulfilling, taking psychedelic, being in these countries, seeing extreme poverty, seeing the extravagance of like Shanghai and some of those things and different culture. Like, do you have some moments where it was really like changed you kind of personally?
Yeah, I mean, you just start to realize that no matter where you go in the world, humans are the same at the end of the day. It's like, I know right now people are talking like, oh, are we going to go to war with China, like over a trade war and stuff? But that's really just like the U.S. government going at it with the Chinese government. It's like when you just meet the everyday people in China or most countries in the world, they don't have anything personally against Americans. Most Americans like don't actually have anything personally against them. The governments might have some beef, but most everyday people, it's not even on their radar.
I don't think it's a sensitive topic, but one of the things that surprised me when I moved to China is I lived in a district called Jiabei district, which is sort of north, which was like real hood China. Like, it was very like densely populated, but on like every corner there would be brothels, and it would just be like a haircut place or something. It'd be chicks in like mini skirts with red lights on. And for me, coming out of conservative Boston, I was young, I was in my early 20s, like that really surprised me. Like, whoa, like there are just hookers all over the place. But socially, it was just like, I don't want to say tolerated, but like nobody batted an eye. Nobody really seemed to think it was strange.
Yeah, so those places were all over the place. My first maybe 2 years in China, and then recently 3 years ago, the cops went through and closed down the majority of them.
Okay.
Like, they still exist, but I used to see them like almost every other block, and now there's not as many of them, but they still exist for sure.
Did it surprise you, like, because I'm sure like if you go to karaoke's or things like that, I've been in places and they'll just bring in a bunch of women and line them up and be like, pick the ones you want.
Yeah, so they did that at the karaoke we were at, and then I was like, oh God, like, are these hookers? I wasn't sure, because like sometimes, yeah, you choose the one you want, and then like she's more or less a prostitute. These were just girls that were in there to help like pour drinks and sing songs and stuff.
Right.
So it wasn't like that. Like, they weren't there for sexual purposes.
Yeah, right.
I was probably very surprised my first, 6 months in China when I saw that. I'd be like, oh, this is wild.
But I have to say, like, it is a curious feeling when you're walking by and there are just chicks and you're just like, yeah, for like $20, I could have sex with that lady right now. It's a weird dynamic. Like, it goes away after a while because you just see it enough, but it was definitely like an intriguing.
Yeah, and it was more just like the handjob parlors as well, where you might not be having sex with this woman, but
right.
Those were so common that my friend said he once met a Chinese guy who would like go to the handjob parlor with his 16-year-old son. And it was just like a father and son activity.
That's so funny, dude.
Thank you, man. And I'm not opposed to taking shrooms at the Encore, so if it doesn't happen this winter, maybe it will happen when I'm back in like June or something.
Guys, please watch this video. I'll do everything I can to promote it. Thank you. You're listening to the Old Dirty Boston podcast.